Hello, my name is Devin Easterlin, and I'm CEO here at SJA Property Management. And I'm thrilled to have a special guest with us today, Nikole Lalas. She is our Director of Maintenance here at SJA. And today we're going to be going over a few things around how you should be thinking about evaluating a rental property and factoring in maintenance, how you should get that rental property ready for the market, and then best practices in keeping that property in tip-top shape, making sure that you're getting the most money possible while still protecting that asset. So, Nikole, I'd love it if you could just start off by telling you a little bit about what you do, and then we'll jump into it.
Hi, Devin. Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm here today. I'd love to talk about maintenance. So I am, like you said, the Director of Maintenance. And basically what I do is I provide, oversight and coordination for our entire maintenance department. I work very closely with our maintenance manager and our maintenance coordinators to make sure that all of the maintenance requests that are coming in from our tenants are processed through smoothly, that our tenants are getting exceptional customer service, and that we're keeping our owners up to date on any of the conditions that are happening at their property. And another big piece I do is coordination with our technicians to get that work done.
Absolutely. And that is no small feat. Just approximately, how many maintenance work orders are you processing monthly?
Oh gosh, in busy summer months like these, we can go 400 or 500 work orders in a month.
Yes. So lots of work orders, a lot of experience here with Nikole in the room. So I really appreciate that. Let's start us off by just talking about, for investors out there that are looking to think about how maintenance and the expense of maintenance is going to impact their investment and their returns. What should they be thinking about? About how much money are we talking on a yearly basis with your average single family residential property?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you're thinking about not only maintenance work orders that are going to come in that are responding to issues that come up, but also thinking about proactive maintenance that we really should be doing on our properties to help make sure that we're maintaining the value and keeping them in good condition. I think a good rule of thumb is about 10% of the property value is really what you want to be budgeting in order to keep on top of the maintenance that's going to come in throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. So another way to say that, and what I've factored in is about 5 to 10% per year of the annual rental income is another way to be thinking about that. So, if you think about it, 1 month is typically 8%. So 1 month of income for that property is typically 8%. But I know there's some other factors that come into play with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So thinking about the age of the home, definitely the older that a home gets, thinking about the age of the systems in the home, how recently have they been serviced? How often do you service them? And then also taking into consideration, just because in Washington here, we have some pretty interesting weather. Our climate is very wet, and that can have an impact on the home as well. So thinking about our roof cleaning and roof repairs and gutter cleaning, things like those can also have an impact on how much you're going to be spending overall on maintenance.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point, because we do some investing here, and I do some investing personally. And yes, that 8 to 10%, allocating 5% for ongoing maintenance and 5% for capital expenses, such as a roof or something like that. That's a good rule of thumb, like you mentioned, but really it's going to come down to that specific property that you're evaluating. So we've purchased properties, near the turn of the century, 1910, something like that. And that capital expenses on those have been much higher. And you're going to have to really increase your budget and when you're putting together your pro forma for that. Another tool that I use is, once you get into negotiations and you're getting the property inspected, a good inspector will give you a lot of useful life analysis on various systems within the home. So how much more time do they have with the water heater? How much more time does that roof have? If there's any big things that you need to have factored in, because all of these components eventually are going to be obsolete and going to need to be redone. And so thinking that the roof might be good now, but if your hold time is 10, 15 years, you're probably going to be redoing that roof at some point. So I use that in our factors as well.
Yeah,
Excellent.
definitely. And I think we have, great technology that we can lean into now that we maybe didn't have a few years ago, where we're identifying the actual age of the individual appliance and having an inspector go through there. They can identify all of the systems in your home and let you know the current age of them, how much expectancy you might have left on the home, and having all of that documented so that you can keep track of those various systems for those homes will definitely help you in the long run when it comes to planning for financials for maintenance for your investment property.
Sure. Yeah. I've also noticed with really good inspectors, they will have the ability to understand defects in various materials that were used. So, for example, we bought a fourplex a few years ago, and it had a defect in the piping that was used. It was a PVC product that they put in the 90s, and he knew of that, and he said that all of that's going to have to be replaced. And so we did a little more investigation, and we found joints that had broken already and maintenance work orders that had been done on the property already. And we did have to fully replace all of that piping, but we went back to the seller and negotiated a lower price to account for that. So a good inspector can show you what's broken, and also, some of those defects that might be hiding and are going to come up later. So that helps a lot as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So in moving on, once we have the property and we're thinking about getting the property rent ready. So there's a couple ways that we think about it here. So a lot of our clients have lived in the properties that they are now turning into investments, rental properties. And some clients are buying them, never lived in them, and they're just strictly investment properties. So we have both things going on here. But what are some things, how are we thinking about getting a property rent ready, and what things should we be doing, and the importance of that?
Yeah. So when we're trying to get a property rent ready, we're definitely thinking about how do we get a property in a great condition for a tenant? So when we think about getting it ready, we think about having it like hotel clean, right? So when you're walking into a new property, it's not just, walking into a neighbor's home. It's walking into a place that you want to be at. So thinking about hotel clean, making sure that all of the appliances are functioning, everything's really in good working order. Everything's fresh and new and ready for somebody to move in right away and feel comfortable and make it their own without a lot of, obstacles to overcome.
Yeah. And some terms that I've heard you all saying in the past is you want everything functioning as designed. You want a hotel clean. You want to make sure that, the paint's in very good condition. Because what we're doing here, there's a couple things. But one is you're attracting the best possible tenants. The best possible tenants have good credit, they have great rental history, and they really have their choice of anything they want to rent. Mm-hmm. And landlords would be happy to rent to them. Well, they're also really picky, and they want to rent the best properties. So you want to show your property in that best light. Yeah. Where an owner, I was talking about some of our properties have been, the owners live there. Well, there might be certain things that an owner's willing to overlook.
Yeah, and you just have to jiggle the handle, right? You just have to jiggle the handle, and then it'll go in, and that's fine. Yeah, for sure.
And we get a lot of that, and hey, I understand, but you want to change that. When you turn this into a little business, an investment, you're going to want to make sure it's run really well. Also, what we've found is if you spend a little extra time on the front end, getting everything working properly, functioning as designed, you're going to have less costs once a tenant moves in. Because you do have an obligation as a landlord to fix things that are broken. And so you want to, and there's timelines around that. And it's typically more expensive to do one-off repairs than it is to do it all at once when you first start to before you get it on the market. So that's another thing to think about. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about, I know you do, and your team does a really extensive evaluation of the property in terms of what type of appliances are in there, materials, all of that. Can you kind of walk us through that and why you do that?
Yeah. So basically we have our inspections done, and it's going in and it's documenting everything about the property, not just the appliances and systems, but also the finishes that we have within the property. So looking at the carpeting, looking at the flooring, looking at the walls, looking really at everything, so that we get a really good understanding of the condition that the property is in. And this helps us to, when those work orders do come in and the tenants do have some concerns, it gives us a better insight into what the property's condition was and what it looks like, and it helps us to really navigate what the concern might be. And that helps us to maintain that high level of the property that we received it in, and also just help to work with the tenants through those as they come up.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I hear you saying, there's a couple of things. One is you definitely want to have, and most savvy landlords understand that you need to have a walkthrough checklist that the tenant signs. It's documenting the condition of the property so that you have a clear documentation when that tenant moves out as to if there's any damage that exceeds normal wear and tear. And I think most people will understand that process. Of course, when you want to do that with best practices, you're going to want to take lots and lots of photos, video. Really what you're trying to do is ensure there is no doubt that this damage was or was not here. You want to clear up any doubt in the beginning to make that process at the end as fair as possible, and to make sure if there is damage, it's very easy that you can justify that. And then there's another thing that I heard you say, which makes a lot of sense to me, is you talked about knowing serial numbers of the appliances and things like that. And I'm thinking that helps with speed to repair.
Oh, for sure.
So if say a tenant says, well, my dishwasher is broken or isn't functioning properly, you can go to our system, look up the serial number, get the parts that are necessary very quickly, rather than having to send somebody out to do that. They have to get the serial number, call it back in. That's delays. So I like that aspect as well.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely times where we're relying on those serial numbers to look up parts to see if we can still order parts and pieces are still in manufacture. And it's definitely going to help save the owner in the long run if it's something where we can just order that piece directly and get it shipped to the property for them.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. It's just one of those, ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. Putting the time in the beginning when we're first onboarding, even if you're managing yourself, you only have a couple or one property, just putting the time into really documenting and getting that property ready for a tenant so you're prepared throughout that lease term. It goes a long way to being effective, efficient, and then tenant satisfaction as well.
Yeah, for
Wonderful.
sure. And with documenting, that's absolutely so important. And that's something that we do very, very regularly. So documenting during onboarding, but also as we're managing a property that sometimes we're managing for a few years, and then we have to replace appliance, then we have documentation on all of those appliances that we put in at a later time, right? So keeping all of that information is really very important to maintaining these investment properties.
Absolutely. So speaking of maintaining, what type of things are you putting in for our owners around recurring maintenance? I know from properties that I live at personally, I have things that just come up all the time. How are you handling that type of thing to ensure it gets done? What's the process for that?
Yeah, so during our onboarding, we always have a conversation with our owners to learn more about the house, right? Learn, especially if they were living there, then they have a lot of insight and knowledge in the condition of the home and what they were doing to help maintain the home. So understanding if they already had a regular landscaping or if they were regularly scheduling with roof cleaning, then that's all good information to know. But even if not, even if they just purchased it and they don't know, we do that reminder of like, hey, given the property, given the area, given the, condition or age of the home, these are some of the things that we would highly recommend for you to set up for reoccurring maintenance. And then we put those in our system, and then we'll automatically post them for them. And it'll be things, like I said, doing a roof cleaning, right? Doing a gutter cleaning. That's huge in this area because it rains so often. We want to make sure that those gutters are cleared out and they're constantly diverting the water away from the home. Other things inside the home, like doing a regular dryer vent cleaning. That's really important because we never want for a fire to happen at a property, right? Tenants don't think about that. They just do their laundry. They don't really think about how the dryer vents might be getting clogged up. So that's something we want to do for preventative maintenance. In addition, we also think about things like our furnace filters. Those are things that we want to have regularly changed out so that it's preserving the life of the furnace, right? And it's making sure that the air quality is good and the home is smelling fresh. This is going to help to make sure that we're continuing getting tenants in there. Other things that we are looking at, sometimes we'll recommend for there to be a pest control. And the reason for that is because then we're having regular maintenance, regularly somebody walking around the house to ensure that there are no areas that pests are accessing, and getting into the home. That can be something, or again, regular landscaping, just depending on the condition of the home. Sometimes homes will come with interesting things like a hot tub, right? Or a pool, or there are other things that need regular maintenance. And when we're having those onboarding conversations with you, we're identifying what those unique things are about your property, and we can make some suggestions as to how we can keep up those pieces for you to make sure that they're staying in good working condition.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And really the goal with this is to ensure that the reoccurring maintenance happens and it happens on time. Sometimes there's some seasonality around that, but you want to ensure if you're managing yourself or using management company, you want to ensure that that company is putting these things into the system so that there's triggers and these things are getting done regularly. And so that's one of the complaints that I hear from owners that are maybe transferring to our company, is the other company wasn't ensuring that the property was well maintained over time. And I think by having reoccurring maintenance work orders in there, in the system, and then the owner doesn't have to think about it, it's just triggered. They're saying, yes, go forward. Some that come to mind are gutter cleaning, like you mentioned, roof cleaning, maybe patio pressure washing.
That's another one too.
Keep pest control, but really important. And really what you're doing is you're preventing bigger problems down the line. So you're enhancing the age of the furnace, enhancing the age, how long the roof will last, ensuring not water intrusion. So really important things to set like that up.
Also things like, we know that we have windstorms, right? In the fall that happen. And sometimes this will result in power outages. And we had, issues previously where if the generator hadn't been recently serviced, all of a sudden their generator is not working. And the last thing that we want to do is have a tenant kind of facing that issue, or we're trying to reach out to an owner in the middle of a power outage to find out that information. And so wanting to make sure that we're getting all of that information out front and that we're providing those services on a yearly basis so that when something does happen, then that piece is ready to go, right? So
absolutely. Well, another aspect I wanted to touch on is the importance of regular evaluations. And I think this is very important, especially for self-managers, to make sure they're going out to that property regularly and doing a full evaluation and knowing what they should be looking for. I think sometimes we can get into out of sight, out of mind. Rent is being paid. The tenants don't seem to have any issues. And then when the tenants move out in 2 years, they come into the property and they're shocked by what they find. There's a lot of issues that could have been addressed, that could have been mitigated, but they didn't find it because they didn't do proper walkthroughs. So I know with you and your team, you're coming out to these properties at least once a year to make sure that there's a full evaluation. What are you looking for outside of lease violations and the other things associated with property management? Do they have 2 dogs or multiple people living in the property? They shouldn't. Of course, that's another area we handle. We'll stay focused on maintenance. What are you looking for from a maintenance perspective when you guys are walking a property?
So when they're initially walking those properties, they're always looking for any kind of evidence of water damage, spotting on the walls, on the ceiling, right? They're also looking at the sinks, right? The tubs, to see if there's any drips, any leaking around the faucets. They're checking underneath the sinks to see if there's any dripping there. Definitely just looking for anything that could potentially be maintenance that the tenant may not necessarily be aware of, or may have just be overlooking, that we want to address and get into before it becomes a big problem. And then just looking at the overall, care of the home, and checking the furnace filters, making sure that those are being changed like they're supposed to be. And then even having a conversation with the tenant on how it's going in the home, and letting them know that we're a partner there to help to make sure that that home is staying in good condition for them, and learning a little bit about if there are any things that have come up that they maybe haven't submitted a work order with yet. Definitely many things will come out of those conversations. Oh, by the way, oh yeah, I forgot about this. And then they'll point it out, so, and then our technicians will take that back and we'll create work orders from it, and we'll make sure that these things are getting addressed.
Well, I love that too, because you want your tenants and your residents to feel as though there's trust between the management company or the landlord, and that they can share things that are going wrong with the property or things that they're seeing. Sometimes you could get into a situation where a tenant feels as though they might be punished for something that's damaged, and you want to make sure that they understand that you're going to be fair, and that it's a partnership to keep the property in very good condition, not only for their health and safety, but oftentimes we're taking large security deposits when we're bringing residents into our home. And it's a very happy day when we give a tenant back the full security deposit. That is really a great thing. Now, it doesn't happen all the time because things come up, but we're trying to educate them on how they can be a good steward of this home, of this property, and making sure they're keeping it in the best condition. And we don't want them doing repairs themselves. We've seen that over the years, and that can be a disaster. So we want them to bring it to our attention. I think one thing to have, if you're doing this on your own, is when you're doing your evaluations, have a checklist and have all the major things, and you can find it online, different checklists, to make sure you're looking for water intrusion, cracks in the tile, things that are going to lead to problems later, and making sure you're doing those regular walkthroughs. So important. I've just seen too many issues when homeowners or management companies don't do that. So making sure you do that is super important. Next, I'd love to chat about documentation. This is something that not everybody does, but is very important. So how do we go about documenting what repairs have been done, and what's the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, documentation is so important, and we definitely take that very seriously with all of the maintenance. Like I said, before, with onboarding, we try and get as much information as we possibly can. But then in addition to that, once we do have a property with us, we are documenting, the minute that the tenant is submitting a work order, letting us know that there's an issue at the property. We are documenting our communication to them. We're going through some troubleshooting steps, and we're documenting all that.
What do you mean by submit? Just for those that aren't familiar, what do you mean by submit a maintenance work order? Many people might not know what that means.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so our tenants, they work through a portal, and they log in. They're all given login as soon as they move in. We tell them a little bit about our property mail portal, and they have a little video that can walk them through how to submit a work order. And they get that information up front so that they know that that's the place to connect with us if there are any issues with the property. They open up the portal, and then they can go in there and they submit if there are any concerns. The cool thing about it is the property meld system that we use has an AI interface, and what it allows for is for tenants to go in and enter the concern that they have, or the issue that they're seeing, and immediately get a response that gives them some troubleshooting tips on how they could potentially fix that issue on their own, right? So it'll immediately start interacting with them, walk them through some troubleshooting tips, and then also ask them for some photos. This is additional documentation that we want to see and that we want to be able to pass along to our technicians, so that we're getting the right technicians on site, and so that they're able to address whatever the issue is very, very quickly. Submitting that work order request through that portal, doing that troubleshooting, and then it goes on to our maintenance coordinators who review all of that information that has come in. If there's any additional information that they need, they can ask the tenant. They also look at the documentation on the property property page to see if there's, been a history. Is this something that happened a month ago? Did we already send a technician out and now it's happening again? Can we send that technician back out? Are we making sure that we're doing it in a cost-efficient way for the owner, right? And is there a warranty on this? Is this an HOA property? Is this something that would be handled outside of, this specific unit? So having all of this information documented helps to inform our processes and make sure that we are addressing the issue in the most efficient way possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so the nice thing about that is that when they do, it's all in writing. And so there's a log. And I would say that anyone that is doing this on their own, make sure that they get an email from the tenant explaining what the issue is. That does a few things. One, you can get additional information, like we're requesting multiple photos, we're requesting make and model of appliance, a lot of things, so we can act quickly with all the appropriate information. We're also doing that troubleshooting. There are rules about when a landlord needs to respond by and how quickly they need to get the repairs done. And you want to log that progress so that you don't get yourself into trouble, whether it's a he said, she said about when the work started, when it was completed. We can go back to our logs on behalf of our owners and say, came in on a Tuesday, we were out there by Wednesday, we repaired it by Thursday.
Absolutely.
And now we've protected our owner's liability with that and making sure they're in compliance with those landlord-tenant laws for sure.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. Yep. Always being very, very aware of those landlord-tenant laws and making sure that we're responding in the appropriate time frame and getting our technicians out to take care of that is always top of mind.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing that comes to mind when we talk about the landlord-tenant laws and the rules is how strict Washington State is on type of vendor can do what type of work. And this is something that people really need to be careful because they may have a wonderful handyman who is not lead-based certified and who is not a licensed electrician. And if they go out and do work on that property and something happens, maybe there's a fire due to faulty something, it's going that owner or the person who authorized that work is going to be liable for those damages, which could be very, very, very severe in the case of a fire. So we want to make sure that our technicians and the technicians that you may be sending all are licensed for the work that they're doing. They have the certifications for the work that they're doing. Asbestos comes to mind, lead-based paint comes to mind. And those rules are really strict when you get into, I know you know this, but even if you're not painting, you're just removing some drywall to do a plumbing repair, you need to be lead-based certified. And if you're not, you can be the fines are very, very steep for it's the homeowner that's ultimately going to pay those prices. So have to make sure that you're keeping up with your trades. And then, of course, making sure they're licensed, insured, they're screening their employees because you're dealing with occupied property. Yes. And occupied property is a whole other standard that landlords and property managers need to be held to.
Yeah, for sure. And making sure that they are following all of the regulations, not just for liability, but also for the safety of our tenants as well. Making sure that they are putting up barriers and that they're containing the areas when they are cutting into walls, and understanding the environmental factors that might come into play is all really important things that we want to make sure that all of our technicians are aware of and are taking into account and practicing every time that they go into a property.
Yeah. But I know that, as a investor myself, I know there's additional cost when you do it the right way like that. But the cost and the risk that you run if you don't do it and something happens, that could put you out of business. And so that's why you really need to be diligent about that. And I think you make the great point. Like, really, it's about resident safety. That's really what we're trying to. That's why these laws are in place, is because these people are trusting that you're going to do these repairs right. This is their home, they're living at the moment, and you want to make sure you're providing a safe, clean place for them to live. And you don't want to be messing around with lead-based paint, asbestos, all those type of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even in Washington State, especially in Seattle area, like we have inspections that are done all the time in different cities. It's not just, if something happens to happen, right? It's an inspector will come out and inspect your property and make sure that you're in compliance. So it's not even waiting for something to fail, right? It's making sure that we're keeping it in tip-top shape. So when those inspections do come around, it's not a problem. They walk through, we pass, and it's wonderful. That's what we always love to see.
Yeah, and you're referring to the regular inspections that cities have, but specifically, we'll talk about Seattle, that they're going to come out and they're going to inspect your property. They're going to make sure it's in compliance. And if it's not, the fines can be severe, or they may not allow it to be a rental until these things are completed, which means you're going to have to move a tenant out. You might have to pay for lodging. You're going to have lost rent associated with that. So getting in front of that, because really what you want is you want your investment to run smoothly. And making sure that you're in compliance with things. It costs a little bit more than doing it the cheap way, but you're going to have a better run business, which is more smooth, makes you want to buy another property and then another property, rather than having a bunch of problems that creep up, for sure. Well, wonderful. Thank you, Nikole. I'd love to hear a little bit about how at SJA, I know that you are in charge of SJA Pros, and SJA Pros being a separate contracting company that partners with SJA Property Management. Talk a little about how that's structured and the benefits that our owners are receiving from that affiliation.
Yeah, for sure. So SJA Pros is our general contracting company, and basically they work hand in hand with everything that we do throughout the maintenance department with SJA. Our pros are our technicians that are going out and doing all of that work in the field, and they are specifically trained to work with tenants and understand that it's different, than working directly with an owner or going out to a site where the owner's on site and helping to kind of guide the process or give approvals. It's very different when you have a tenant who's on site and knowing that their point of contact and communication needs to be with the property management team, with our coordinators. So they are all trained in that, and they're also trained in that response time lines that we have in place. It might be okay if an owner wants to put off an issue until Monday or Tuesday because they don't want to pay those weekend rates, and they're fine living without hot water for a couple of days. That's okay. But when you have tenants in place, it's a very different situation. So they are very aware of the timelines that we need to meet in order to make sure that the properties are staying habitable. Another thing is making sure that they, of course, are all licensed, right? And holding the appropriate permits and certificates and things that are needed in order to keep all of our properties up to building code. So that's another piece of working with pros and having those technicians, general contractor that we work directly and partner with, is making sure that they are staying up to date on all of those compliance pieces in addition to working hand in hand with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I've found that works so nice is SJA Pros only has one client.
Oh, yes,
and that's
definitely
SJA PM. So we have a lot of control over how SJA Pros works and the timelines associated with repairs. So if we go out to another vendor, they may be they're not getting out there for a few days, where SJA Pros is ready. They're on it. They know SJA PM systems. They know what's the expectations are. And they're also making sure the work is done the first time. And if it's not, I know you guys will come out and make it right. And that's wonderful.
For sure. And also, we're also looking at, proactive problem solving when we're going out to a property and we're asked to maybe do something pretty minor because the tenant of an inconvenience. We're also going to look around the property and see, well, what are some of the other things that we can do here to repair? How can we make sure that this property is in good condition? If we notice that there's something within the property that needs to be fixed or that needs to be attended or addressed, then we can reach out to the coordinators and the property managers and let them know about these things, and maybe repair them on site if that's something that we can do at that time. So definitely keeping that preventative eye open.
More of a holistic approach, because you do have access to the history of the property, history of the owner, what's happened before, what may have led up to it, and where you want to see the property, going forward. So it's a great partnership, and I love how it's been working so far. Nikole, thank you so much. It's been wonderful chatting with you. I hope, we were able to share some information, our firsthand information in dealing with this daily. How many maintenance work orders did you say again per month?
Oh my gosh, 400 to 500 in this busy time.
400 to 500.
Yeah, it can get to be really high for sure.
Yeah, and I will say, you're not just dealing with, multifamily buildings where every unit's the same. Our portfolio is made up primarily of single family homes and maybe some small multifamily buildings. So we're dealing with that Capitol Hill townhome or that's from, 1938, and then we're also dealing with that Sammamish 5,000 square foot, all new amenities, and being able to adapt and provide excellent maintenance service for both of those. So kudos to you and your team. You guys are doing an excellent job.
Thank you so much, Devin. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll all talk soon.
Bye-bye.